On a mysterious island, a woman wakes up alone with no memory of how she got there or what her name is. She can't tell where she is, and there's a shell in her hand. Nobody answers when she screams for help, so she decides to blow the shell to see what happens. At that moment a second woman shows up. She doesn't remember her name either, and her object is a knife. Things get tense between them and Shell Lady takes the knife from her, only to be interrupted by a guy that tells them there are more people like them all over the shore wearing the same clothes. Soon everyone comes together and they move some tree trunks to sit on while sharing a coconut. Nobody remembers what happened, and each person woke up with a different item. At that moment they notice that their identical clothes have labels with their names on them. Shell Lady is Chase, Knife Lady is KC, and the guy that found them is Cooper. After everyone learns their names, Chase announces she'll go looking for clues, so Brody and Donovan go with her. The trio retrieves all the items that appeared with them, but then Donovan decides to go back to the others. Meanwhile the group is starting a fire and carving the word help in the sand. While sunbathing, Taylor finds a book buried in the sand called The Mysterious Island, but she dismisses it. Donovan arrives and convinces everyone to forget their troubles by swimming. At first they have lots of fun, but soon they panic when they see sharks approaching. Everyone rushes back to the shore, but unfortunately Donovan doesn't swim fast enough and soon a shark bites him before taking him away. Moments later, Chase and Brody find a beautiful waterfall, and Brody asks Chase not to tell the others. Then they share a kiss, but when Brody asks for more, Chase turns him down. Brody doesn't accept this and pushes Chase to the ground to try to take advantage of her. Chase struggles against him and manages to push him off, then she takes out the knife to keep him at bay and runs away. Afterward Brody returns to the camp and begins giving everyone chores to do, just assuming he can be the leader and not telling them about the waterfall. Soon Chase comes back too and immediately starts beating Brody up until the others pull her back. Then Chase tells the group about the waterfall and Brody's attack, but he calls her a liar and the others don't know who to believe. That night, Chase dreams of being in a room with a gun while blood flows on the floor. In the morning, she's the first one to wake up, so she grabs an axe and a shell and goes on a walk. Suddenly she finds Donovan washed up on the shore, alive but with a bitten leg, so Chase blows the shell to call the others. Working together, they manage to move Donovan back to the camp. Afterward the group has a meeting to discuss their options. Brody thinks they should move somewhere safer, but Coopers thinks they should stay on the shore in case a boat passes by. Chase interrupts to say they should get out, mentioning she saw Mason and Hayden behaving weirdly earlier. The duo explains they counted the steps between the spots each of them showed up at, and it was always exactly 39. By using the same number to explore the area, they find a sign that says, "Find your way back." Chase thinks the sign is a clue, but everyone else thinks it's just a sign and ignores it. Frustrated, Chase throws the shell against a rock, causing it to break. Now the shell reveals a barcode with the words, "Property of Island," and a blinking device that fell out of it. Not noticing this, Chase takes a nap, and when she wakes up, she sees an inflatable raft on the sea. She takes off her shoes before getting into the water, and accidentally steps on a piece of glass. As she swims toward the raft, the blood from her foot gets the attention of the sharks. Thankfully Chase can swim fast enough to reach the raft right before the sharks reach her. In the raft, she finds various objects like medical cases and a bunch of bullets. There are also oars that she uses to return to the shore. She hides everything she's found but makes sure to check the cases first. One has medicine, but the other one has a locked box. Afterward Chase speaks to Cooper in private, and after he swears to keep the secret, she shows him some of the things she's found, like stamps and a packet of gum that has 39 on it. Meanwhile Brody and KC go looking for food and end up kissing in the woods. Later, the group sees the weather is getting worse and discusses again if they should move or not. Cooper ends up punching Brody and a fight ensues, so the others quickly jump in to separate them. A frustrated Copper leaves and Brody violently takes the knife from Chase to keep everyone at bay. Now the whole group can see he truly is crazy and turns against him, so Brody drops the knife and goes away. To everyone's surprise, Casey grabs the knife and gives it back to Chase. At that moment a storm reaches the island, so Chase takes the group to hide in the raft while Brody and Cooper put up with the rain. In the raft, the group falls asleep, and Chase has another dream. She's in a room with blood on the floor and she shoots a woman sitting on a chair. She's suddenly woken up by Cooper calling out her name, so she reveals the location and invites him inside. Once the storm passes, Chase heads back to the sign and finds the device that fell from the shell. Realizing what it is, she begins running back to the old camp, only to come across Brody, who has built a spear. After telling him to go wake up the others, Chase digs out the case from the raft and uses the device to open the box, guessing the password is some combination of 3 and 9. Inside she finds a gun, so she loads it up with the bullets before rejoining the group. Later, Casey is privately checking her scar when she's approached by Hayden, asking what happened between her and Brody in the woods. Casey confirms they did the dirty and blames herself for it, but Hayden can tell Brody attacked her. Meanwhile Chase and Copper go on a hike to look for more clues. After lots of walking and climbing a cliff, they come across a large abandoned building hotel. They see beds and a fountain with running water, so they rush back to tell the others. Brody doesn't like the idea of having to climb a cliff and an argument ensues, during which he threatens Brody with the spear. The others tell him to cut it, so an offended Brody goes away. The rest of the group asks Chase to leave too, accusing her of being the one triggering the arguments. As clouds cover the island again, Chase goes to sleep in the raft and has the same dream of the dying lady. In the morning, the group drags Chase out of the raft and takes her to the beach, where Brody is dead with a knife in his body. The others accuse Chase of killing him and don't believe her when she says she didn't, so she starts beating them up to escape. Casey hits her extra hard with a stick and Chase faints, only to suddenly wake up on a chair inside a strange room. She can't move any part of her body, and soon a nurse shows up to give her an injection without answering her questions. Chase falls asleep and has visions of the lady from the dream and the sea from the island. When she wakes up, a doctor is checking on her. He promises she'll get answers soon and uses a device to allow her body to move again. It's explained that a magnetic force field was keeping her in place, which is required to keep the prison population under wraps. Chase doesn't understand what he means by prison, but the doctor goes away and leaves her in the locked room. Soon a bunch of armed guards arrive and take her to see Warden Wells, who casually mentions Chase has military training. Wells confirms this is a prison, and the island is just a simulation they put the prisoners through as part of an experiment to see how criminals would act if they were given a second chance. Chase is the first one to have ever woken up on her own, but she'll be sent back soon. Later the nurse comes with 2 guards to connect Chase back to the simulation. Unwilling to return, Chase fights the guards off, knocking out one of them and connecting the other one to the chair using the force field. Then she takes the nurse hostage, only to throw her at the upcoming guards so she can run away. An alarm rings in the building as Chase beats down a few more guards then climbs down a pillar to reach the outside. Unfortunately she's soon surrounded by guards and they quickly knock her out. Afterward Chase is taken to a cell where the door is a force field, and the magnetic force keeps her against the wall. Eventually Chase falls asleep and dreams of the lady in the chair again. When she wakes up, the wall finally releases her and the guards take her to see Wells, who has prepared a meeting with the scientists that created the simulation. That the point of the experiment is to test nature versus nurture. They delete everyone's memories to check if changing a person's circumstances would also change their morals. They have no idea how Chase managed to wake up, and they begin discussing whether they should send her back or not. Tired of this, Wells takes Chase outside for lunch. He greatly dislikes the scientists and the simulation, but he puts up with them so the government will send them money. He also confirms that if someone dies in the simulation, they die in the real world. When she asks about Brody, Wells tells her he was an awful person and his crimes were abuse and murder, so he's happy he's dead. Moments later, the scientists announce that they'll send Chase back to the island. She immediately protests and grabs her chair to fight, but the guards quickly capture her and take her away. Then Chase is tied up outside by the neck, so she slaps Wells and tries to move, but the noose keeps her in place and Wells announces a punishment. The guards come to attack her and at first Chase manages to defend herself, but there are too many of them and eventually she gets defeated. Afterward Chase is secretly visited by Dr. Weiss, one of the simulation scientists. She tells her to stay on her path and not to be Wells' puppet because she suspects he's tampering with the results of the tests. When she's about to say more, she's interrupted by the nurse and the guards, who take Chase away in a truck. During the trip, the guard punches her, so she fights him off and jumps out of the truck to escape. Chase sneaks around in the tall grass while avoiding the searching lights and eventually finds a building with a guard outside. She waits for the guy to leave with a scientist and gets inside, where she finds an advanced control center and has to knock out another guard. Then she steals a white coat and moves around with her head down until she discovers the disturbing main room. All the other criminals from the island are floating in tanks while wearing strange suits. Suddenly she's surrounded by Wells and his men, who hold her down as the nurse gives her an injection. An unconscious Chase is put back in her tank and reconnected to the simulation. In seconds, Chase wakes up on the beach again with her hands tied up while the group discusses what to do with her regarding Brody's murder. She remembers everything about the prison and tells the others, but no one believes her and they refuse to untie her. However, Chase's words cause Hayden to have a vision of her in a car with a guy, who she kisses before stabbing him multiple times, then she crosses him off a kill list. Afterward Chase tries running away so the group goes after her and tackles her to the ground. While they're struggling on the sand, they're suddenly interrupted by 2 new people called Bonnie and Clyde. The more Clyde speaks, the more he sounds like Wells, so Chase thinks the Warren sent them to manipulate them. When nobody listens to her warnings, she makes an observation: the duo doesn't seem bothered by the body on the beach. Now exposed, Bonnie and Clyde threaten everyone with their weapons and make them drop anything they can use to defend themselves. Then they ask about the boxes from the raft, revealing they know about the gun. While Clyde argues with Chase, he suddenly stabs Hayden in the stomach, explaining she was killed Brody for what he did to KC. That's why she was arrested. She killed a bunch of abusers as some kind of vigilante. Clyde confirms the prison is real and they all signed waivers to agree to the rules, which include getting killed if they did any killing. He and Bonnie only appear when the rules must be enforced. They also reveal that the memory wipes have been reversed, so soon everyone's mind will be flooded with images. Then Clyde frees Chase and tells her to leave. She rushes to find the boxes she hid and retrieves the gun, which makes her have the vision of her shooting the lady, and she thinks that must have been her crime. Afterward, Chase takes the medicine box to the group and leaves with the gun. Bonnie and Clyde scold the group for spending the past few days doing nothing and tell them there's a village on the other side of the island, so they should head there. After reminding them they'll always be watching them and that leaving the island is forbidden, Bonnie and Clyde go away. The group buries Hayden and Brody and discusses what to do. Casey, Cooper, and Moses decide to look for the village, but the others prefer to stay at their camp. A few hours later, the trio finds a bunch of huts while Bonnie and Clyde smile from afar as they say, "Let the games begin." Soon the prisoners start receiving their memories back. Mason sees himself shooting people at a mall with blood on his face. Casey is in her car having a mental breakdown near the sea while a storm rages outside, and Blair sees herself as a nurse in a hospital telling the doctor that the patient filed a "do not resuscitate." The doctor didn't have such a note on the patient's file, so he couldn't help the patients that were in pain because they weren't in an euthanasia state. Refusing to let her patient suffer, Blair tampered with the patient's IVs, killing lots of people before she was caught. At that moment, Blair sees Taylor dragging the raft into the water to try to escape, so she rushes to stop her as she reminds her of Bonnie and Clyde's warnings. Taylor just pushes her away and keeps going, so Blair runs to tell the others. Unfortunately, they arrive too late and Taylor escapes in the raft. At the same time, Moses is getting his memories back too. He used to be a rebel, and with the help of a friend, he put a bomb inside an empty building as an act of protest. However, they were wrong and the building did have people in it, which ended up dead. Moses and his friend were both arrested for murder. Casey also continues to see her memories. She was married to Rick and they had 2 kids together, but Rick was physically and verbally abusive towards her. Since Rick wouldn't get a job, Casey worked at a bar where she met Jordan, who she fell in love with. They started to see each other in secret very often, but one day Casey was disappointed to discover Jordan left town. Later she asked Rick for a divorce, mentioning the affair and letting him know that any man was better than him. Furious, Rick pushed her head into the sink, keeping her underwater for a few seconds before aggressively announcing she wouldn't see her sons again. This caused her to have a mental breakdown, during which she sedated her sons and put them in the back of the car before driving into the sea. The kids died, but she managed to get out, so she went home and self-deleted in front of Rick, who quickly saved her. On the beach, Casey has a breakdown as she remembers her dead sons and starts seeing hallucinations of her kids and the car, so Moses tries his best to comfort her and shares his own story. Then they agree that to survive, they'll have to find Chase. As they walk, Casey is too afraid of going near the water because of her traumatic memories, so Moses provides her comfort to help her enjoy swimming again. While Donovan chats with Blair and jokingly asks her to marry him, he also goes through his memories. He used to work in an office and was obsessed with a coworker who kept turning him down. Eventually she told HR about his harassment, so one afternoon she cornered her in the bathroom and killed her while blaming her for leading him on. Blair and Donovan's conversation is interrupted by a sudden shot. It's Mason, who has found a flare gun and says he was just testing it. In the woods, Cooper is searching the area and suddenly overhears Bonnie and Clyde talking. Apparently they're planning to do something against the rules and mention some kind of boss. Meanwhile, Chase makes it back to the abandoned hotel, and in a room, she finds the lady from her visions, whose face is quite damaged. The lady suddenly appears by Chase's side and grabs her by the neck, telling her she's killed her own mother. As the lady laughs, Chase reminds herself this isn't real and her mother disappears. Then Chase approaches a chair and finds a key for room 39, so she heads there and begins searching every nook and cranny. Behind a painting she finds an envelope full of photos and a title for a house that she suddenly gets a vision of. The photos are of her and her mother, the house, and to her shock, one of her hugging Cooper. At that moment she hears a noise outside and bumps into Cooper, so she uses the chance to show him the pictures. Then they both admit that they remember being happy as a couple. In the meantime, Taylor shipwrecks and gets hurt, but at least she reaches another island. As the raft floats away, Taylor searches the area and finds a skull that has the "property of Island" text. At that moment she's hit by her memories. It turns out she and her boyfriend tried to rob a bank. Afterward she eats some fruit and takes a nap. When she wakes up, she finds her hand wrapped in bandages and a bowl next to a plank that says "chicken soup," so she drinks it all. Minutes later, she's found by Bonnie and Clyde, who congratulate her for finding a place called Two-Land, but explain they're here because she broke the rules. Taylor explains she didn't mean to kill anyone and it was an accident during the robbery, blaming her boyfriend for the deaths. The duo then reveals that the island only has one resident who happens to be a cannibal, and the soup she ate was made with her own fingers. In the evening, Casey wakes up to see her son burning the abandoned village. She approaches the boy to stop him, telling him how much she loves him. However, the sun is just a hallucination, and Moses has to pull Casey away from the flames, which are very real. Nearby, Bonnie and Clyde happily watch the fire they started. Back to Chase, she has a vision of her childhood. When she was a kid, she was bothered a lot by her classmates, but her mother was never sympathetic. She would yell at Chase and demand her to solve her problems because she didn't want a weakling as a daughter. From then on, Chase started to take fighting classes, but her mother disapproved of that too because it wasn't very feminine. In fact, the mother told her not to come home for the holidays if she didn't give up the fighting, so instead Chase joined the Marines. Cooper also has a short vision and sees himself at war, surrounded by bodies. When he sees Chase with the gun in her hand, the rest of the memory comes to him. The two of them met when they joined the Marines and fought together during the war. During a mission, Cooper was hit by an explosion and was seriously damaged, so a helicopter took him away. Chase also remembers this, and they realize the house from the pictures is the ranch they moved to after the war. Another flashback reveals that after Cooper recovered from the explosion, his face was still severely damaged and he was worried nobody would hire him like that. In the present, Cooper is looking at himself in the mirror when suddenly he sees Chase's mother next to him. She removes the bullet from her forehead and hands him to Cooper, but luckily at that moment Chase makes him snap out of it. She explains that she also sees her mom and that she thinks she killed her even if she doesn't remember it, but Cooper says they were framed. At the beach, Mason gets his leg hurt after slipping on the rocks, so Blair takes care of the wound. Donovan sees this and gets jealous because Blair had taken care of his leg first and he had thought they had something. After Mason leaves, Donovan pretends he has something in his eyes to get Blair's attention and begins talking badly about Mason. Suddenly he tells Blair that he loves her, but Blair turns him down. Meanwhile, Mason has another flashback. After killing all those people at the mall, he could hear the police coming for him, so he took a gun and tried to self-delete. However, he couldn't do it and he got arrested. At that moment Blair approaches him and asks him to never leave her alone with Donovan because he's dangerously obsessed. In the woods, Bonnie and Clyde see Casey and Moses bonding and decide to let them be because they'll probably attack each other soon. Clyde opens a screen on his arm to search for different victims, revealing he has access to all the cameras on the island as people in the control room do. This causes two technicians to notice something is wrong. Later, while Blair is away, Mason is taking off his shirt and Donovan uses the chance to choke him. Mason struggles against Donovan and they fall to the floor, but when Mason tries to grab something to defend himself, Donovan finishes killing him and hides him under some leaves at the same time by the sea. Blair suddenly remembers that she was married to a woman and rushes back to tell Donovan, only to see Mason's body on the ground. Disturbed, she falls to her knees and pretends to accept Donovan's feelings while secretly taking the flare gun from Mason. Then Blair pretends she's about to kiss Donovan to get close enough and shoot him at point-blank range, killing him instantly. Back to Casey and Moses, they arrive at the hotel and find Cooper and Chase. An argument ensues over secrets and information, so Cooper takes out a gun to shut them up, causing him to have a flashback. The farm they were renting belonged to Chase's mother, and she refused to extend the lease because they weren't making enough money. Cooper tried to plead for mercy, but the old lady began insulting him and Chase, which made Cooper angry. Chase's mother took out a gun to make him leave and Cooper tried to take it from her, so she hit him with a vase, and in the struggle the gun was accidentally shot, killing her. In the present, it's revealed that Cooper was so lost in the vision that he has fired the gun here too, killing Moses. While Casey hugs the body, Cooper tells Chase he killed her mother and made it look like a break-in. Chase gets very upset and is about to punch him, but suddenly Clyde shows up and stops her, saying he'll take it from here. Clyde starts fighting Cooper while Bonnie goes after Chase. All four of them are great fighters, so lots of hits are exchanged as they move all around the room and climb on the furniture. When Clyde is about to stab Cooper, Chase hits him first to stop him. Clyde retaliates with his machete, but Chase dodges it and the blade kills Bonnie instead. Then Chase stabs her with a spear, making her disappear from the simulation. Cooper attacks Clyde with an axe at the same time Chase turns the spear on him, but Clyde uses it to stab her before disappearing too. The spear also disappears, but Chase is still bleeding, so she leaves the building to die alone. When she finds the sea she passes out, only to wake up in the prison again. Dr. Weiss welcomes her and explains they brought her back right before dying because thanks to Cooper's confession, she's been exonerated of her crimes and she's off death row. She also says that Bonnie and Clyde were marshals who went rogue and were removed for interfering with the results of the game. While the doctors check on Chase's health, Wells tries to visit her, but Weiss stops him and implies he'll be investigated for his involvement in the marshals' misbehavior. Furious, Wells finds the nurse and convinces her to be on his side because otherwise she'll go down with him. When Chase is taken to see a psychiatrist, she learns that the names on the prisoners' shirt labels had been their surnames, and her actual first name is Gabriella. The doctor reveals that all the prisoners went into the simulation voluntarily because it would get them out of death row and they signed non-disclosure agreements. This was mandated by the government, saying the experiments should only be done on those truly irredeemable, which in Texas is a low bar. To this day, nobody has reached redemption in the game to win it. After a few more tests, Chase is taken to see Wells, who reveals all her mother's money went to a hospital so she has nothing to go back to. He also admits he did try to sabotage the program because the other prisoners are awful people who don't deserve a second chance or to get tax money wasted on them. Then he offers her a deal: if she doesn't tell the scientists about his plans, he'll take Cooper out of the simulation so she can have her revenge. Chase immediately accepts. Meanwhile, the scientists tell Bonnie and Clyde that they'll go to jail for their actions, but their sentence may be smaller if they were under someone's orders. However, the duo is too scared of Wells and doesn't mention his name. Afterward, Chase has to meet with the scientists one last time before she's released to tell them about her experience. They ask her about the gun she found because they didn't put it in the code, yet Chase doesn't mention Wells' name either. Then the scientists explain that 39 is the number of steps from the end of the cell block to the electric chair. Chase finds this very sadistic and points out there's no way all this money is being spent to rehabilitate criminals, so she suspects they have a secret profitable reason. Wells agrees and an argument ensues, but at that moment he gets a call from the governor, so the meeting must be paused. A guard takes Chase back to the lab while explaining she has to wait for her paperwork to leave. Suddenly Wells appears with the nurse, who captures Chase with the force field and is about to kill her with an injection. Luckily Weiss shows up and orders the guards to stop him, but as Wells is escorted out, he tells Chase she still doesn't know everything. Later the scientists judge Wells, revealing he was the one to put the cannibal on the island too and that the nurse has betrayed him. An offended Wells starts screaming and again tells Chase that they're hiding something from her, so the guards take him away. Afterward Chase finally gets ready to leave and she's approached by Weiss, who finally confesses the last secret as she gives Chase an injection. Suddenly Chase's face changes, revealing she's actually quite old. She's been in prison for 25 years, but when the prisoners enter the simulation, their avatar appears at the age they committed the crime. The illusion is only in the prisoners' minds, everyone else has always seen her as an older woman. Chase realizes Cooper must be old too and demands to see him, but Weiss says it's not possible because he's still on the island. As Chase finally leaves the prison, she sees the city outside and discovers how much the world has changed in almost 3 decades. Meanwhile Wells appears on the island too and Casey and Cooper welcome him to Oneland. Make sure to subscribe our channel Cinema Fathom and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.